Music theory with Microsoft Excel. Auto-transposable music system through all 12 collections of 7 notes. Each of the 12 collections of notes being automatically rotatable through all 7 modes, creating a new tonic upon each rotation. Part number 1. So get ready and some coffee, because you ain't never seen rockin' unless you excel at rockin', for which Microsoft Excel is a requirement. Are in Excel. If you don't have access to this workbook, that's okay, because we'll basically build this from a blank worksheet. But if you do have access, 4 tabs down below, including a very colorful fretboard tab, we will refer to the example tab, in essence the answer key, the practice tab, having pre-formatted cells so you can practice the practice problem with less Excel formatting. But if you don't have any of that, that's okay, because we'll be working in the blank tab, starting from scratch, a blank worksheet, practicing not only our music skills, but Excel formatting skills as well, for formatting's sake. Let's go on over to the example tab to get an idea of our overall objective. A worksheet allowing us to write down our musical information as efficiently as possible, also allowing us to automatically transpose that information to the perspective of all 12 collections of 7 notes, and be able to rotate all 12 collections of 7 notes through the modes, shifting the tonic as we do so. So the way we want to visualize this is that we write down our musical information from the perspective of one of the collections of notes, like C major, A minor. Does not mean that we can only have 7 notes. We have 12 notes available, but we're going to write it down from the perspective of a particular 7-note collection. That allows us then to have 2 dials that we can use to transpose that information to the 12 collections of notes and through the modal points. So we're going to start thinking about a MIDI system, meaning this is like a DAW type of system, which has the underlying kind of foundation of just the notes. And we could still kind of use that underlying foundation, but we're going to put on top of that the relative positions so that we can do this kind of transposition, which I think should be done in like a DAW system or a MIDI system. We'll then number and give the note names, and we'll give absolute note names and octaves. We'll talk about actual chord constructions, and then what are the different ways we can write the chords, noting that chords are useful because they're going to give us a shorthand to write things down. If you look like a DAW system, or if you look at something like sheet music, you can see that they don't often use chords because they're going to spread out everything, which makes sense in like an opera, where basically different people are building chords with different instruments and so on. But oftentimes, if you can write a chord, it's going to be a lot cleaner. It's going to be a lot easier way to represent something. So it would be nice if we had systems that could do that when you're writing your system. We're going to write then the relative positions for all 12 collections of notes, noting that we still have 12 notes within them. We're just going to use 0.5 to put the ones that are not in the 7-note collection. And then we'll think about how we can write down our information, instead of in a DAW situation, note by note, in a way that we can kind of put things on one line, so that I can write things down basically as a chord on one line, and that'll build a chord that is within an octave. Or if I want to, I can break it out as well. And then I can write down the relative positions from a Nashville number system. Or I can write it down with just the note names if we're more familiar with that. And the system should be able to transpose that to the relative Nashville number system like this. That then allows us to then populate something like a MIDI system, which would expand this information, which is the next thing we will do over here, so that we have something that's going to be a lot larger. If you've ever worked in a DAW system, of course, then it's just all of the notes are going to be laid out, and it looks kind of overwhelming. I think it should be nice to have an option to write something more succinctly, where you have everything that's within an octave written in relative position to a particular key that you are in, as well as allowing you to write basic chord constructions this way or this way, which streamlines the information and allows you to transpose that information to all 12 collections of 7 notes, as well as through rotating through the modal points. So that's what we'll kind of work on. So let's go on to the blank tab here. And first, I'm just going to kind of outline like the ground floor of like a MIDI system, just so we get the idea of the logic of that. And then we'll list out our musical alphabet, and we'll list out our octaves and so on, and then we'll list out our modal points, and then we'll get onto chords later. So just realize that if you're working in something like a MIDI or something like that, and this is important just for music players in general, not just computer people, because the fact that the system is built this way, and because music is totally logical, it's all just ratios, will help us understand it musically. So it really is useful for musicians, I believe, to build this stuff out and kind of think of it in like a rational way as well as a musical way, right? It's like thinking of colors in a rational way, or how they work can help you paint with them, I feel like. But anyway, if we had a MIDI system, let's first format this whole thing. I'm going to select the entire worksheet. I'm going to right click on it and format an underline formatting, which I usually like to make currency, negative numbers. I'm going to make them just negative this way. And then I'm going to say that no $, and I'm going to remove the decimals for now, adding them as needed. I'm going to say OK. And then I like to make the whole thing bold. You don't have to do that, but I think that's good for a screencast. All right, so then a MIDI system is usually just going to number the notes. So the underlying thing for MIDI is just the notes. 0, 1, let's do this, 0, 1, 2, and then they're just going to list up the notes, and I'm just going to go down to 95. So I'm going to bring this down to 95. It could go higher than that in a MIDI system, but I just need enough of these to cover the normal range that we will be using, which from a user perspective is around like middle C, right? Middle C, 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down is the way I would basically see it, right? Now I'm going to say that C, the MIDI system typically starts on C and then counts up from there. So now realize that doesn't make as good a sense to me, because I would think that the collection of notes is just been named from A to G sharp, right? So I would rather say in my mind that we're working on the collection of notes 1 through 12, which would be A through G sharp. That's how I think of the numbering system in my mind, because I think it's the most functional, easy way to see it. But MIDI is going to start where the music system kind of started, from the piano tradition, of course, and start on C and count through it. So I'm going to say that's fine, because that's just going to be the underlying foundation. So what are they going to do? The notes in the musical alphabet are going to be C, and then C, D, and then D. C, D represents, that's what I'm going to use to represent a sharp or a flat. So that's going to be C sharp or D flat. This is where we have 2 names for one note, which is not efficient. It would be easier, as MIDI does, to use a number, although this number I don't think is as efficient for mental understanding, because this number should be, we should tie the local numbers 1 through 12 or whatever to the middle distance, like on the piano, either making C1 or A behind the C lower than the C1, which is what I would propose would be the thing to do, because it just lines up with A through G sharp. But at the MIDI system, they didn't want negative numbers, it looks like, right? So they're going to start at 0 and then just count up from there. So we're starting then at a pitch that is outside the normal range. All right, so we're going to then say D, and we're going higher in pitch, so we're going to say D, E, and then E, and there's no sharp or flat between E and F, because they base it on the key of C, so we talked about that before. It's going to be F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, and then A sharp or B flat, and then B, and then it gets back to C again, right? So then so that's going to be the general pattern. And then I'm going to call that, this is going to be the letter. So this is the local letter. When I say local distance, I'm just going to say that when we think about our music system, we can think about it as a number line, a note number line going infinitely up and back, although our ear has, of course, limits in terms of how far we can hear up and back. So the local distance is visualizing it as like a lap, meaning we only go one time around the lap, because then you get the octave, which sounds similar. So we're going to call that the local distance, which means you start one place and you go clockwise around the clock. And so the letters are not showing octaves. In other words, they're showing as though we're just going around a clock, clockwise around the clock. All right. And then, so then I can say that this is going to be octave. Now I'm going to say that the octave is going to start at -1. This is what I would represent basically the octaves as. I'll talk more about that later. I'm just going to copy that down for now. This equals that. And let me format this sheet again. I'm going to take the whole sheet, format this again, and I'll make the negatives just have that negative. So it shows a negative like that. And so I'm just going to copy that down to here. Okay, so that'll be the first range. I'm going to make this top bit my header formatting, which is typically home tab, font group. I'm going to center it. That was in the alignment group. Hit the drop down. I'm going to make it black and then make it white. And then I'm going to select this bit to here. And I'm going to make that a color by selecting the drop down. I like this color. If you don't have that, it's in more colors, standard, and then this one right there, boom. Select that one, and then I'm going to put brackets around it, drop down borders. So that's going to be one collection of notes, right? And then I'm going to repeat that by saying this equals the C up top. So this is representing the note number line, which is still going up. So from a MIDI system, this would be like way back on the piano on the dark notes, or on the heavy notes, the low pitch notes on your left hand, if you're thinking about a piano, right? And now we're going up towards the middle of the piano as we're going up this way. Now, so we've gone through one collection of notes going up from there, and now we're starting at the next, which would be going up from 12 if we're looking at total distance, or we're starting over if we're looking at a rotation, like we're going around a lap, going around a circle. All right, because music has both of those qualities to it. So that goes up to 24, and then it's going to start over again. And I'm going to call this 0. So this is what I'm going to call octave, negative octave. And now we're on like the 0 octave. This is going to be equal to that. I'm going to copy that down. And that's going to go down to here. I'm going to make this a different color so that we can see that this is another, set, or going around the lap from a local distance perspective. So I'm going to make this green and bordered. And then we'll keep this going. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's do this again. This equals this. I'm going to copy that down until the C repeats. And then there's the C. I'm going to delete the C for now. And this is what I'm going to say, octave 1. This equals the one above it. And I'm going to copy this down. And I'll make that once again blue. So I'm going to make this blue again. And bordered. And then we'll go to the next one. So it's going to start on 36. Again, we're going up directionally towards C, right? So now we're going towards the middle, from the heavy notes to the middle of the piano, from left to right, if you're thinking about a piano. And then this is going to be then 2. And then I'll copy this C down until the C repeats again. And then there it repeats, delete, and then 2 is going to equal the one above it. And I'm going to say that's going to be the 2 octave and copy that down. And I'm going to make that border and green. And then we're going to go from there, we're going to go do it again. So this equals the C up top again. And I'm going to copy that down until the C repeats. Delete the C. And then that's going to be 3. And then this equals the one above it. I'm going to copy that down. And then I'll make that one blue. I'm just alternating the color so that we could see mapping out. And then we're going to go to the next round is going to be equal to the C up top here. And I'm going to copy that down until we see the C again. There it is. Bam. And this is going to equal the 4. Now, interesting, that 4, this is now 4, and this equals the 1. That's the middle C is C4. Now, that C4, to me, again, that naming convention is ugly. Like, I wouldn't call, like, they called it C4, which doesn't seem, from a human perspective, the best way to do it. Why did they do it? This isn't because the computer did it that way. This is way back when whoever made the system before computers did it, and they called it 4, because possibly they didn't want to go in the negative direction. From a human perspective, you would think that the C4, the middle of like the piano where you normally play, where our ear picks it up, it's like the colors, where the color is the brightest, like it has the brightest in the middle. That the same thing is going to be here. We're at the point where we can most distinguish the tone, right? And that's going to be the middle point. So I would like to call that just 0, right? That's the 0 octave, because that makes more sense, because then because that's where we normally play. And then we go up pitch-wise 2 octaves up, down pitch-wise -2 octaves down. That's how I think it would be more beautiful, more symmetrical to see it that way. But obviously, we have to deal with the normal convention, which is the fact that it starts on the 4. Middle C is a 4. So that's the 4th octave. So I'm going to make this a different color. I'm going to make it orange and here. Okay? And then notice from my perspective, then I would also say, if I was to create the numbering system, then I want to start the numbering system not on C, because the musical alphabet starts on A. So if I was to create the numbers, I would like to number the A 1 right there. So instead of naming 1 up here, right? So the MIDI system is naming this one as C, because from a computer standpoint, they just wanted to start at 0 and have an absolute numbering system going upwards just as the baseline. From a human perspective, it wouldn't really make sense for me to call this C 60. To say middle C is number 60 doesn't really seem to make sense from a human perspective. I would rather call that middle point of the piano, of the instrument, the place we play at most of the time, 1, or I think even better, we should start at the musical alphabet, meaning go back to the A, and this should be what I would say is number 1. So from an absolute numbering perspective, from a human perspective, I would make that the 1, and then this is 2. So when I memorize the musical alphabet, this is how I'm memorizing it, right? I'm saying I'm gonna number it this way. So A represents 1. From an absolute standpoint, you can say it goes around in a circle, and we can just keep on repeating that as a local distance. Or you can say, I'm going to start an absolute numbering system, but I'm still going to take the middle A, which is A3 on the piano instead of A4, and say that is going to be my range. So if I would rather have the middle range going from this A3, to G sharp 4. That's how I would typically think of it, because I think it makes most sense. This is going to be the local distance, 1, 2. I'm just going to do the same thing over here. So then, so you can see this is off. I have a stagger here, the way I would like to visualize it, versus the way that the current naming convention is, because of the piano being based on the middle C, even though they named the A, right? And so then this is going to be, if I keep this as going up, this is going to be this plus 13. So this is going to be this plus 1. So then the 13 is going up from here, and this would continue down this way. But the local distance, to me, this is my naming convention, right? So it's going to be the local distance will stay the same, run 1 through 12, right? So 1 through 12. So this would be, the human perspective that I think is optimal. It means then that if I label A3 the middle part of the piano note number 1, and then I go towards the left with an absolute note numbering system towards the lower notes on the piano, I'm going to end up in negative note number territory. Now that's okay, even though it seems pretty clear that's what was trying to be avoided when they started at middle C for the octave, and from the MIDI system when they said, hey, look, we're going to start way back here in way low territory and make that 0 and just count up from there. From a functional or human standpoint, however, it makes sense to just have the numbering system in the place that you're going to be working in the baseline numbers. 1 through 12, not 57 through 68, right? So that means that if I go backwards, it's going to be this -1 from an absolute system, and then that would go up, and let's bring it up to around, how far did I go up? A couple octaves to go into 23. Let's bring it up to 23. So we'll keep that up to negative 23, and that's going to be then that's going to be if I was to repeat going this way on the local distance, it would be equal to the 12. So I'd still call that a 12 because it's a G sharp, and I can copy that back until the 12 repeats. Did you up here somewhere? 12 repeats. Let's delete that. And up top, I'm going to make this then the blue. So I'm just putting something different from our little stagger so you can see the stagger of what's happening here versus what I think is the most logical system from a human perspective to best understand it. Selecting the drop down, making this blue and bordered, and then I'll continue up here with the local distance, which is going to be equal to the 12 again, and we will copy that up and say, we'll go from here up, and that will give us that, and so I'm going to make that green. So there we have it. So from our standpoint, from what we play in, particularly on the guitar, but also on the piano, we're going to be playing in this range, and then go towards the lower or heavier down in pitch, down maybe 2 octaves. Most likely on the guitar, not more than 1 octave that way, right? And then we're going to be going up in pitch, going this way. So I'm going to make this then the blue going this way, going higher to the right on the piano, or higher in pitch towards the right or towards the floor on the guitar. And then we'll have another one. This is going to be equal to 24 plus 1. And I'll just copy that out. And then we'll copy out this is going to be equal to the local distance, which is 1, an A. And I'm just going to copy that down until we get to another 1. So that'll be right there. And then we'll do another one out. Let's make that one. Well, let's delete this and let's make that green. So now we've got 2 octaves up. So from a practical standpoint, this is where we're typically going to be playing, in this middle range, and then 2 octaves up, 2 octaves back. If I lay that on top of the MIDI kind of numbering system, then it went way back because it didn't want to go into negative numbers, way back here, and then just counted up until it got to this middle point. So the 60 then, I believe, is representing like the middle C from like a MIDI system. That's fine. We can still use that and still, from a practical system, put on top of that the range that is best from a human perspective from a numbering system. So this is going to be what I would call the functional number, or the human number, right? The number system that's best for people. And this is going to be the local number best for people. All right, so then I'm going to make this black and white and center that. And you can see that, boom, 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 down here. Let's also finish this formatting. Local distance is going to be equal to this C, and so this one is going from C to C instead of A to G sharp. And so let's make that then, and this is going to be then, let's get our number system here. This is going to be a 5 for the octave. So these are all named 5 on the octave. And let's make that blue so we can see the stagger that's happening. here, and then here. And then we'll repeat that again. This equals the C, and then this is going to be a 6, and then this equals the 6. And then I'll copy this down, and that takes it down here, and then the 6 repeats. And let's make that green. Now, in a MIDI system, it goes further than that. It can go out forever, right? But this is the range that we're typically going to be working within. So let's kind of repeat that process again so I can see the local distance up here, which is basically what we're going to mainly build on. We're going to build on the local distance, and then we'll put this numbering system underneath it when we think about like how it would be mapped out in like a MIDI or database system. So I'm going to make this a small, a skinny over here, and then I'm just going to once again put the local, I'm going to call it local note number. I'm using 2 rows for the header so I can just select them because I'm not going to make it into a table, so that should be okay. I'm going to make it black, white, and center, and so that's going to be our local again, and I'm just going to kind of copy this up to the top once again and build this out in a similar fashion. So the local number is going to be 1, 2, and we're going out to 12. So we're going out to 12, and then we've got the absolute number. So absolute number. So we're going to say note number. Not for the MIDI system, but for our mind system, right? It's going to be the same. I'm starting in the local distance, so it's going to be 1, 2, and then going down to 12. We're kind of repeating the process here, but I'm starting now in the middle. So then the local note is going to repeat. So once again, we're going to repeat it. So that's going to be 1, and I'm going to make this the orange bit in the middle. So this is our preferred way to kind of view it, and make that orange in the middle. And then we're going to repeat this again, 1 through 12, 1 through 12. And then this, though, is going to be going up, 12 plus 1 to the 13. So this is going to be going up to 13. And I'm going to make this then our blue bit. That's going to be the blue bit. Boom, boom, boom. And then I'm going to put on top of that, then let's put the old octave. This is going to be, now I'm going to put what I would prefer to be the new octave. This is what I would think of as an octave system instead of calling it C4, because I'm going to try to visualize it in the cleanest way that makes sense to me. And then we're going to have the letter. So we'll call this local letter. And then we'll make this here and here and center that. So I would like to call this then the point of 0. The octave would be 0 instead of C3 to C4. And then let's actually put the letter first. Well, I'll keep it like that. So we'll say this should be octave 0, be equal to the one above it. And then I'll copy that down. The letters are going to be the same, but I'm going to start at A. So I'm going to copy the A over here. It's going to go from A down to G sharp. Okay? But then I would like to call that octave 0, that first octave, and I'm going to make that orange instead of this being C3 and then this being C4, just for what I think would be the optimal way to visualize it. And then I'm going to say down here, this would be the first octave, meaning I'm going up higher in pitch. I would like to call that 1 octave up, right? And then I think that would be a more elegant, symmetrical format. So that's what I'm going to kind of visualize it as. And then I'm going to, and then this is going to be blue. And then we're going to go up from there again, which is going to be another local distance of this. I'm going to copy that down again and make that the next one up. This will keep on going up. 24 plus 1, not that. 24 plus 1 gives us 25. I will copy that down. And this is what I would like to call octave 2 instead of 5, right? Or 4 or whatever. That would make more sense to me. I think it's just I mean, if you could do the system over from scratch, I think that would be the way to visualize it. So I want to think of it as efficiently as possible, and then do what we have to bend it into the current, to the normal convention. All right, so now I'm going to go up the other way. So now I'm going to build up the other way. So I'm going to do that by inserting. So I can have 2 octaves going backwards. So I'm going to insert down to here, right-click, insert, shift cells down. Make sure to check that off or else it's going to shift sideways. And then I'm going to just format paint from here to here. Going to format paint it instead of clearing the formatting, because if I clear the formatting, then it's not going to have my underline or baseline formatting, which I want to have as the underline or baseline. So then if I go up the other way, the local distance is going to be once again equal to this. And I could copy that just simply all the way up because it'll repeat again. So I could copy that to here and then just note that it repeats right there. I'm going to make that blue, border and blue. And then this will be green. So we can say that's going to be border and green. And then this one's going to be equal to this -1 absolute distance. I'm going to copy that all the way up. And then I can do the same color formatting. This is going to be green border and blue border. And then we're going to say that I would like to call this -1 distance or octave. So in other words, if I'm in the middle of the piano starting on A as opposed to C, the A that's a little bit below it, so I have the normal alphabet, then I'm going to say, this would be 1 octave lower, -1. And then this is going to be -2 octaves lower. And that would be, I think, a better way to see it. I'm playing in the middle, or is octave 0, and then I'm going up 2 octaves, and then, or I can go back -2 octaves, right? So that would be, that's how I'm just going to visualize it. And then I'll adjust it again for the purposes of external presentation when needed to, or be able to toggle back and forth. So my idea here, as we get into the age of AI, is that we should be able to start to help people move towards a more efficient system like this. This is more efficient, like a numbering system that's more efficient for the human brain, not for the MIDI system, not this. I don't want to remember that middle C is 60. That's not helpful from a musical standpoint, although maybe helpful for like MIDI, but it is helpful from a musical standpoint to remember like 1 as an A or something like that, to have a local numbering system. And it would be useful to see instead of starting at C4 and then behind that having 3 that are in the 3 octave, start at 0 being A through G sharp, because that's where our musical alphabet starts, and then go 2 octaves up, 2 octaves back. We can do that these days because AI can easily transpose between old music sheets, new music sheets, and transpose between new music sheets to old music. So we can easily, we have the capacity to go back and forth. So there's no, so that means, in my opinion, that we should try to make things as efficient as possible, and then be able to go back to less efficient formats when needed to, so that we can do research and transpose while moving forward in the most efficient way, allowing new learners to learn easier, right? They're not going to have to jump through, new people learning music shouldn't have to jump through the same hoops unless they want to study, like it would be similar to studying like ancient Greek or something. They want to learn the language for history purposes. But if they want to learn just music for the logic of music, they should learn it in the most logical way. To do that, we need to clean up our formatting. Not everyone agrees with that, but that's my proposal. I feel like that is obvious. I think it's self-evident, but whatever. So then we'll continue on with that after next time. We'll continue on with this.